There's a new Thor in town and Odin isn't happy about that. Welcome to the Complete Story Series, where I take single issue and full trade paperback story arcs and I condense them down into a dramatic story for you. All alterations are to prevent copyright problems and make it work in a video format. And don't forget to support these industries by purchasing these comics yourself if you enjoy them. This follows up from the pre-Secret Wars story. The Thor you know was deemed unworthy of his hammer because of something Nick Fury said to him. We still don't know what was said, but the hammer lay on the moon for days waiting for a new wielder. A woman picked it up, hiding her identity and becoming the new Thor. And the original Thor began a journey to become worthy again. We discovered that the woman was actually Jane Foster, dying of cancer. And every time she changes into Thor, all of her treatments are removed from her system. She sits in the hospital receiving her normal chemotherapy, began as a lump in her breast, and then it spread to her lymph nodes and possibly her liver. She comes back over and over to get treatment as the doctors can't understand why the treatment isn't working. But there is a reason, just one that she can't tell them. A nurse comes in to check on Jane to make sure that she has someone to help her home, and she tells them, yeah, a coworker. Jane looks up to see the weather. Roxxon built a storm tracking space station, but up in the space station, the reporters began telling the weather when they are thrown down to the floor. Looking up, the reporters see that the station was hit by something, and that something is a body. Across the body is written, "So begins the War of the Realms." Before anyone can figure out what that could mean, more bodies begin to fly into the space station, tearing it apart. The news cuts the feed, stating that there are minor technical difficulties, but Jane knows better, and she whispers, Mjolnir. The mystical hammer begins to fly towards Earth faster than the falling space station. She goes outside to grab the hammer, thinking to herself, who knew dying could be so much fun? Iron Man watches as the satellite begins to come crashing down, and he asks Dr. Strange, how do we stop this? And Dr. Strange tells him, we don't, she does. Thor manages to stop the satellite from causing too much damage, and she helps the workers out. Iron Man then asks if she knows what could have caused it, and she responds with, I. And she flies back off. Okay then, nice chat. Thor goes into space to see all of the bodies floating around and realizes that they are elf bodies. There is one person who could possibly be behind this, Malekith the Accursed. Thor returns to the hospital to wake up Volstagg as it's time to go back to Heimdall. Jane and Volstagg are both a part of the Congress of Worlds, and Jane represents Midgard. The Light Elves begin accusing the Dark Elves of the bodies floating around in space. Jane agrees with them, but she has to tell them that she didn't see it firsthand. Thor told her about them because she's still trying to keep her identity secret. As the Congress begins pointing fingers, Jane and Volstagg can do nothing but watch as everyone tries to focus on other threats. Back in the holding cells of Asgard, Jane goes to meet Lady Freya. Freya, the All-Mother, was thrown in prison for acts of treason against Odin, the All-Father. Jane tells her how Malekith has begun a war with the Light Elves, and the Congress does not know what to do because they fear what Odin may do. Before leaving though, Freya tells her to tell Thor that her duty lies with Alvheim and the Light Elves. Thor travels to the Bifrost Bridge, but is stopped by Heimdall. He tells her that he only serves the will of the All-Father, but he is not here to stop her. They are. Thor looks back to see Cole Bronson, Odin's brother and the Minister of Justice. But while this is starting, over in the Yawning Void, the Dark Council begins to gather to discuss their next move. They know Thor will be coming for them, but they have someone who wishes to join and help them with that. That's when we see Loki step up. I say, it does feel good to be back again. Back at the Bifrost Bridge, the battle between Thor and the Thunder Guard continues, but Thor is starting to get outmatched. In a desperate move, Thor asks if the Thunder Guard can do this, and she throws her hammer and it starts bouncing and hitting all of the guards, but Cole Bronson himself deflects the attack. At that moment, all of the guards begin to throw their hammers at her, but as Cole comes in to give the final blow, he is stopped by Heimdall. Heimdall tells him, not on my bridge, and he throws Thor through the portal. Cole tells him that this is treason, and he is now under arrest. But Heimdall figured that he would just get one of the good cells before they were all taken. Thor finds herself in Alvheim, land of the Light Elves. The war between the Dark and the Light Elves continues as Malekith watches from atop a hill. As he watches though, a crack of lightning comes down, and he knows Thor has come. As they begin to figure out their plan, Amora tells them that this is a job for the Enchantress. Over in the land of the Ice Giants, Laufey, Loki's real father, stands there looking down at his warriors as Loki comes running up asking, can we finally hug it out? Like, come on. And with that, Loki convinces him to go to Alvheim. It did take a little bit of convincing though. Just as this is going on, Thor begins to join the Light and Dark Elf fight when Loki appears before her. Loki is just here for a chat though. The whole Loki plays tricks and Thor hits Loki with the hammer repeatedly thing is getting a bit old, and there's some bigger problems. Odin. While not trusting, after a little back and forth, Thor tells him that they can now talk, and Loki tells her that he was sent here to see them both die. Looking up, Thor can see Bat Riders coming in carrying bombs, so she takes off and begins to call in a great storm. As the clouds begin to form, lightning begins to flow, and with a blink of an eye, boom! Loki looks up and he hopes that he didn't just watch the last action of Miss Thunder. Jane begins falling from the sky, reaching for Mjolnir. Just a little more, just a little more. And as the two of them begin to reach the ground, Thor stands tall, calling out to Melikath. This war is at an end, Queen Elsa calls out. Fetch your master, dark elf dogs. Melikath begins to materialize in front of Thor and the Queen, asking how he may be of service. The Queen insists that this all needs to end, so they must talk about peace alone. Melikath agrees, but only if Thor stays out of it. As the Queen and Melikath walk off, a giant foot comes crashing down, and Thor looks up. Loki continues. Allow me to make a formal introduction. Hi, Daddy. Within the Queen's chambers, Elsa asks Melikath what it is that he wants for this war to come to an end. He states that he wants the land of the elves to be united, no more light and no more dark. Elsa knows that the two races could never join willingly, and the only way that this could happen would be marriage. But she's heard enough. It's time for Melikath to leave, and as she calls out for her mages, they begin to fade away. That is when Amora can be seen as one of the Queen's mages, telling them how it's going to be a lovely wedding. Outside of the castle, everyone waits to see what's happening inside, and Elsa calls out that the time for war has ended. It is now a time for peace, and to do so, herself and Melikath shall wed. Thor comes flying in, telling her that this can't happen. What spell did he cast on her? There's probably something else that you should be worried about. There's a big trial about to happen. Odin sits on his throne, and Freya is awaiting her trial, and he demands that she confess. Freya tells him that she will confess. She will confess that she has become an enabler for her husband, allowing him to become a stubborn and narrow-minded fool of a god. She continues that since he returned from the void with his brother Kull, the realm has moved on without him, and now he's become a tyrant rather than an all-father. Odin slams down, cracking the floor. I am Asgard woman, from now until the end of time. She tells him to do his worst in silencing her, but for the rest of them, he'll need many more hammers. Just outside the chambers, the Asgardians gather. Holding them back is Kull and the Thunder Guards and the Destroyer, but Sif launches an attack on them. Back inside, Odin begins to sentence Freya when suddenly, lightning begins tearing down the door, and there stands Loki and Thor. Hi, other daddy! Odin walks over to Thor, telling her to kneel, but that's kinda not what she had in mind. Odin tells her, it's about time that we put an end to all of this, which Thor agrees to. And with a powerful swing, she bashes Odin right in the face. Now the final battle can begin, the battle between Thor and Odin. The epic fight begins to make its way to the moons of Saturn, and Odin lands face first onto one of their surfaces. He then looks up at Mjolnir. This is all your damn fault! That's when Thor comes back with a giant piece of the moon and slams it down on Odin, telling him to yield. Take your place in the dust and the shadows like a relic. Odin bursts through the rocks. Yield? Did Odin yield for Ymir? Did he yield for Satura? You can ask them in hell! Back in Asgard, Sif makes her way and freeing Freya from her chains, and asks if Freya is sure on freeing Loki. Freya tells everyone that they don't have to trust Loki. He was a spy sent to the Dark Council, but trust in her. She decided this. As everyone readies themselves, Kull comes in with the Thunder Guard and the Destroyer to put an end to all of this. Over on Alvheim, the marriage between Elsa and Melikath continues with them stating, I do. But after Elsa says it, she thinks to herself, does she? She begins to think back. What is she doing? Oh gods. The priest tells Melikath that he may kiss the bride, and he responds with, there won't be any need for that. And he calls over to the guards to take her away to her cell. Melikath then toasts with everyone of the Dark Council. Which realm is next? Thor and Odin continue their battle in space, with Odin finally knocking Thor into Jupiter. But before Odin can land his final attack, Thor throws her hammer into Odin and then flies in to punch him. Down on Asgard, the Destroyer begins to corner Freya, Sif, and Loki. Freya tells Loki to find whoever's controlling the Destroyer so he can put an end to this. Loki tells Freya that she was right about Melikath and his plans for wars across the realms, but she wasn't right about something else. Loki then takes out his dagger and he stabs Freya in the back. Just then, Odin stops, thinking to himself, something's happened. As Loki moves through the wall, Kull waits there for him with a sword to his throat. He tells him that the queen still lives, but his blade was poisoned. So in the art of poisoning, Loki is either really bad or really good at it. Kull continues to tell him that he can go back to Melikath and tell Melikath that he can do whatever he wants. But Asgard remains off limits as long as the Borson brothers live. Loki walks off. For now, the fighting has stopped in Asgard. Odin took Freya away to his innermost sanctum, the chamber of the Odin sleep. Kull watches over the throne and Jane begins to leave, though she thinks back that no one won this civil war in Asgard, and another war lies elsewhere. There are 10 realms across the world tree, all with their own wonders and terrors, but there is only one guardian who will soar above them all, and her name is Thor. Before we leave though, we see two grunts about to tend to a prisoner who is screaming, "Ah!" He isn't trying to escape, but it is like he suddenly realized something horrible has happened, and that he started to scream for his mother. His mother? I guess they don't make Thors like they used to. They state this as we look past the hammer from the former Ultimate Universe, from another Thor. And that's when we see Odin's son, Thor of the Marvel Prime, bound and screaming to break free. Ah! And that brings us to the end of the first arc of Mighty Thor. Now it's going to be quite a few months until the next part of this arc comes out, so if you want to read it yourself, then you need to check out Mighty Thor number 6, or you'll just wait until we do it in a few months. If you want to chat about this video or any other, hit me up on Twitter at Comicstorian, or hit me up on Instagram at Comicstorian. I'll see you guys next time right here.